If you're looking to stay informed with the latest analysis on the stories that are shaping our world in the areas of foreign policy, national security, and domestic politics, consider becoming a member of the DSR Network. With the DSR Network podcasts, stay ahead of the curve on global affairs. Each episode across our more than 10 shows features top experts, policymakers, and thought leaders who break down complex issues into digestible, engaging conversations. From breaking news to historical context, we cover the latest topics that matter most. Whether it's the intricacies of international diplomacy, the latest in national security strategies, or the dynamics of U.S. politics, the DSR Network has you covered. Members receive an ad-free listening experience, bonus content for virtually all of our shows, an invitation to join the DSR Slack community, enhanced show notes for select podcasts, and much more. Visit thedsrnetwork.com/buy and enter code JULY2024 to receive 50% off the regular membership price for the first year or first month. That's thedsrnetwork.com/buy and code JULY2024. Thank you very much for your support.
Nine, 12, 10, 28, 2, 23.
This is Deep State Radio, coming to you direct from our super secret studio in the third sub-basement of the Ministry of Snark in Washington, D.C., and from other undisclosed locations across America and around the world.
Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Deep State Radio. I'm your host, David Rothkopf, and we have a week full of news to talk to you about, and we've got a great group of people to do it. Of course, we start with our regulars, and that includes the one and only Rosa Brooks of Georgetown University Law Center. How are you today, Rosa?
Great.
Okay, that really is not confidence-inducing, but it's kind of what we expect. Also, our friend Ed Luce of the Financial Times, who is in beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin. How are you doing today, Ed?
I'm on top of the world, David.
Top of the world. Do you know what movie that's a reference to?
Oh, God, damn. You've caught me out already in the show just began.
Exactly. Tom, however, who is a master of American culture, and by that...
Oh,
Tom,
Titanic.
Okay, no. As Tom said, it's White Heat, James Cagney, and when he says on top of the world mob, what happens next, Tom?
The thing he's standing on is blown to pieces and he's killed because he's a convict.
Okay.
Got out of prison and he dies.
All right. Can I amend my answer? I'm on the edge of Lake Michigan. Yeah, find a movie for that.
Yeah, no, there is, in Risky Business, Tom Cruise, well, never mind. Well, it's another story, but a car does end up in the edge of Lake Michigan, doesn't it? But to get back to the Tom that I was referring to, that's Tom Nichols. He's a staff writer at The Atlantic and an author of the Atlantic Daily Newsletter. He teaches at the Harvard Extension School and is a professor emeritus of national security affairs at the U.S. Naval War College. Nice to have you back, Tom.
Good to be back. Thanks.
Yeah, I wish there was better stuff to talk about. I think the best thing to do, since Ed is on scene at the Republican National Convention, is to get just a little bit of Ed's take on this. And then I'd like to talk about the Trump Vance foreign policy, where that leads us all. But Ed, how's Milwaukee? Have you had like a Bratwurst or something?
I have. I've had some German lager. I've had some, very heavy protein since getting here, but not hemlock yet. And hemlock, I think, would be the most appropriate.
Did they give that out to journalists covering the convention? Is that a perk of the assignment?
I suspect if I asked for it, it would be readily available.
Actually, every Financial Times reporter is given a small pill that they can take and
hidden inside a molar.
yes, exactly.
In case they're captured.
In case they're captured.
Yeah. It's the one pill I can assure you I haven't and will never take is the red pill that apparently half of Silicon Valley is now swallowed. But I mean, it is the most. I've been to some fairly dystopian political gatherings in my time, not just in America, but in Britain, in India, and many other democracies that have had their troubles. I've never ever seen anything quite so daunting, or felt such degree of foreboding as I do here at the RNC in Milwaukee. It's cultish in the extreme, and it's triumphalist. They think they've got this.
Triumphalist, cultish. What does that bring to mind, Tom?
We're going down the Leni Riefenstahl road already.
Yeah, could somebody just mention Beavis and Butthead or something? Because I need some light relief.
But we've gone from Jimmy Cagney being exploded to bits to Triumph of the Wellhead. I just don't think it's going to get any better today.
It's probably not. I don't know if we're going to cheer you up, Ed. But Tom, I'm not more than half serious about this. I mean, you have this convention, which is a coronation of arguably the worst, most corrupt candidate in American political history. And yet it seems, if you read some things, like momentum is on his side, or at least it hasn't given out for him yet. I mean, the fact that he's even in this is kind of shocking. As you sort of watch all this, what's your take?
Okay, well, I have one sort of prosaic political take and one 30,000-foot civilizational take. So let's just do the most depressing part first. This is the kind of natural progression of a decadent, bored, unserious people, choosing to have more bread and circuses. I mean, it's that bad. You're right. He's the most corrupt person ever in American life. His VP nominee claims to have really changed his mind. But I think really what he's changed his mind about is how much he wants to be in power, and he's decided he really does. And I think, it just says something bad about us as a people, about millions of us as a people. We can't escape that, and we can't keep blaming Trump and blaming the media and blaming Biden's bad campaign. This is a guy whose behavior would have been exiled from the public space in a much better time not so long ago. And now he's going to be for the third time, the nominee of the Republican Party. The prosaic take is, I think it's the cultishness that Ed talked about. And the one thing I was talking about just before we started today, I was talking about this with this triumphalist part. And I'm going to say the same thing to these Republicans that I said in 2016. They won everything in 2016. Right? They get the House, the Senate, the White House. Okay, you've won all this. What do you want? What is it? What is it that you want to do with this? And it's all this vague kind of punish our enemies and destroy the woke left and make America great again while they're going on about traditional American values while they're being addressed by a porn star and, doing a rap video. I mean, all the stuff that they claim to hate in the culture, they've now just embraced. They've taken out the stuff about abortion. They've, basically just said, we just want to be in power and we don't really care what that means. So I guess the prosaic observation is, okay, they could well win. I don't know what that means other than oppressing a lot of groups of people that they just don't happen to like.
Yeah, I think it's extremely well said. And Rosa, I think, Tom makes a point that a lot of people shy away from. They want to blame politicians, Trump, or the media. But at the end of the day, there's a big segment of the American populace that just wants to feel a certain way. And they're choosing this so they get that feeling, of being empowered or being entertained or being empowered and entertained. But it has certainly not led us to a particularly great place. I see that from the background there, you're in your bunker at an undisclosed location in Wyoming. What's your take on what Tom said and all of this?
With her hand tools, by the way, in case the grid goes down or something.
I do want to state for the record, given the political climate, that these are agricultural implements, not weapons.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
Yes.
They're plowshares. They can be turned into something.
I know that one of them looks like something the Grim Reaper would carry, but that's just coincidental. I mean, I think Tom is right. This has the feel of like the Visigoths sacking Rome, right? And whenever 410 or whenever it was, this is sort of the end of this particular great civilization. Is certainly how it feels at the moment, and it is all emotion, it is all rage, and all resentment. It's sort of this great lashing out of resentment and rage, which has very little substance. I mean, Trump himself has no coherent ideology. He never has. JD Vance is smart enough to know better and has sold his soul for the sake of power. He indeed may perhaps be the future of American politics, but that is where we are right now. And I understand, and up to a point, I empathize with the widespread feeling that clearly is fueling Trump and has fueled Trumpism of just alienation and despair that so many Americans are feeling. I think that, like so many empires, this one has been, become corrupt and decrepit and no longer responsive to its citizenry in any meaningful way. And I think on both the right and the left, we're seeing increasing just sense of despair and rage. And on the left, that has turned into this kind of internal cannibalism, the sort of excesses of what the Republicans deride as wokeness, which has turned into a kind of we feel so powerless over the world more generally. We can't control it, so let's just destroy each other, which is part of what has enabled the rise of Trumpism on the right. And on the right, it's just to sort of burn it all down, burn it all down, fuck you, we hate you all. And that is the ideology, such as it is, that is likely to dominate a second Trump administration, should we come to have one, which unfortunately at this exact moment seems overwhelmingly likely.
If you're loving this show, then it's clear you value unique perspectives on the issues shaping your world. That's why you should check out The Intelligence, the free award-winning daily news podcast from The Economist and its global network of correspondents. And with a subscription to Economist Podcasts Plus, you can also get access to special limited series such as The Modi Raj, a brand new show introducing you to India's enigmatic strongman. Plus The Economist's suite of in-depth weekly shows on business, China, American politics, and tech, all for just a few dollars a month. Search for Economist Podcasts Plus to sign up and start listening.
Yeah, Ed, Rosa sounds, even though we know she's married, Rosa sounds like one of those single cat women that JD Vance is talking about. And when we get to Tom, we know that Tom has a special relationship with cats, so he may want to pick up on that. But, among the new things, at the beginning of this week, we thought, well, the new thing is somebody tried to shoot Trump and Trump has been changed. That lasted for a second or two. And then Trump said, no, I'm not changed. I'm terrible. And
he had a spiritual moment, I'm told.
Yeah, he had a spiritual moment. There was the moment when his ear bandage was off in the afternoon and then back on in the evening. But Ed, the new news is JD Vance. What's your take on what he contributes, detracts from this ticket?
Well, he contributes $45 million a month from Elon Musk. I think he contributes more money from Peter Thiel, David Sachs, who addressed the convention on the opening night and actually was booed when he said that Biden essentially invited Putin to invade Ukraine. That was the least, to me, the booing of David Sachs when he said that ridiculous piece of propaganda was the least unreassuring moment in this ghastly spectacle. But I mean, I suspect first and foremost, Occam's rage, that applies here. The simplest explanation is that Vance brings in more money, more than Burgum would have, and certainly way more than Haley or Rubio would have. So that just the transactionalism of this is plain for all of us to see. Musk was delighted. Cock a hoop, as we say in Britain. Americans look at me very oddly when I use that word, but it means very, very happy with the selection of Vance as Trump's running mate. But there is, of course...
What is this expression?
You didn't even ask him to explain that expression. Cock-a-hoop, don't ask him.
Cock a hoop. It doesn't involve, there's no sort of root to that word that's crude. Don't worry. It's more to do with male chickens being delighted. But anyway, forget it. There is an ideological component to this, though, and that is, Trump chose a mini-me. He chose the most, I think, articulate exponent amongst senior elected Republicans of Trumpism, for whatever we think that is. And I think the America First, the complete indifference, even hostility to Ukraine and to sort of broader democratic agenda in the world, that is a real part of Trumpism. And Vance is a forceful and, I hate to say it, articulate exponent of that. I don't know what it means on China, frankly, because depending on which day of the week, Trump has a different view, an instinct. But he's got a consistent, lifelong instinct about NATO and about Europe, and Vance shares it. And so I think there is a very significant foreign policy signal over and above the money sort of instinct that selecting Vance and the Silicon Valley funders that come with him.
So, Tom, as one of the leading experts on expertise in America, I would like to turn to you on your core area of expertise, which has to do with a long study of the U.S. relationship with Russia, previously the Soviet Union, because people in Europe, I know, are just flipping out at the Vance choice because they see him as even more Putinist than Trump, and his views on Ukraine are, he was at the Munich Security Conference and he's like, we're out of there. And he loves Orban. As somebody who has looked at the world for a long time from this perspective and has been shocked, as all of us have been, at the drift of the GOP into being a pro-Russia party, how do you gauge all this?
First, I want to fight with Ed and Rosa just for a minute. Not fight. Take a small issue. One thing we're forgetting about why Trump chose JD Vance, aside from the fact that who has completely betrayed everything he ever stood for, and Trump finds that reassuring.
I regard that as a amendment.
Pardon?
I regard that as a friendly amendment.
Yeah. All right. I'll add that. It's that we needed to just get to the kind of grubby part of why he chose Vance, which is that Vance just has betrayed himself so completely that I think that's the kind of guy Trump said, that's my guy. He's not going to risk anybody who might have a moment of principle.
Tom, I agree with you entirely. But can I just sort of add one thing, which is that all the people on the shortlist have betrayed themselves completely. That doesn't differentiate.
Not as bad as...
I mean, I watched Haley.
I would say not as much as Vance did. I mean,
okay.
Burgum, Vance really made it an art form at this point.
Rubio.
Which may, and David, this will come back to your NATO question, it may mean that Vance has no real, principles that he's going to stick to if he ends up in office. But I think that this was about Trump feeling safe with a much younger guy, can't overshadow. Anyway, the part I want to take is
very handsome. I don't really agree with that, but Trump says that JD Vance is very handsome.
Okay.
And you know how
I will,
likes handsome people.
I'm going to totally pass on commenting on that. But I will.
Well, Tom, you've got to like the fact that he's brought beards back into American politics.
One of the things about having this kind of a beard is that doofus in sunglasses who posts MAGA stuff has one of these. That's been the thing that's. But the one place I'll take issue with, Rosa, is that I disagree that this is now a late imperial, where the decrepit empire doesn't listen to anybody anymore. This is actually a time where our needs have been almost completely fulfilled, and we're mostly arguing about wants. This isn't like people trudging around grinding wheat with stones. These are people that are claiming to feel unfulfilled and unlistened to while they're having fucking boat parades. There is something deeply kind of decadent about the degree to which the people really have gotten the government to be responsive to it. We don't really live in the 1960s anymore, where the government says, yes, we hear you, but we're going to do the right thing. And we're going to build these highways. We're going to set up these, we really, I think in some sense, it's that the government has become just a kind of a big wish basket that people, if it doesn't produce the pony they want, they yell about burning it all down. And I really think that this is a spiritual crisis inside people who just, they can't fill that hole with, all of the vices that we've now legalized and all of the things that we now think are totally acceptable. So that's my one civilizational, disagreement with Rosa. When it comes to NATO, the Europeans ought to be freaking out. They should be. I mean, this is the Republicans have gone to where like the Spartacus Youth League was. This isn't just like where I said the other day, I was going to say the Republicans have switched places with the old Democrats, but the old Democrats were never this bad. I mean, I came of political age in the late 70s and early 80s. And yeah, I was no fan of, the foreign policy of Ted Kennedy, or others. Something's dinging here. I keep thinking it's me, but I don't think it is. I was no fan of the American left. This is way beyond the American left. This is pro-Kremlin. This is like the Republican Party being taken over by Vladimir Posner at this point. There's a shout. There's a throwback.
That's a real throwback. Exactly.
That it's like, it's just Kremlin talking. The Republican Party had a guy on stage, and yes, Ed, it was a great moment, right? That they finally booed something that was worth booing. I mean, Sachs is just inane. I mean, he's just a completely unserious person with a lot of money. And I mean, it's really shocking. I mean, I keep thinking about Jean Kirkpatrick in 1984, talking about the Democrats when she was at the 84 convention, blame America first. The American right has blown past that in the race to the other end of the horseshoe, where it's not just blame America first, it's actively pro-Russian, because they somehow think that Russia, because they don't know anything about Russia, for one thing, and they think Russia is some like Christian conservative empire, when in fact, if you really want to talk, I mean, to go back to Rosa's point about decadent, decrepit empire that no longer listens to anybody, that's where Russia is now.
Tom, I'm going to say,
in Russia, nothing in it.
If you go to a supermarket in Moscow and you put a coin in the cart, you can pull it out and go up this escalator. It's extraordinary.
Thanks, Tucker. Thank you, Tucker Carlson.
It's amazing. I mean, it's really well beating, and we need it in America.
So I've heard.
Yeah, no, it's
incredible.
It is.
It's just incredible.
It is incredible. So, Rosa, there are two things I'd like you to pick up on this, however you would like to. But first, I'd like you to defend why you think JD Vance is so handsome. Because frankly, that's the only thing that anybody's going to
think JD Vance handsome at all. I think he looks like somebody should give him a good smack. But Trump thinks he's very handsome. Trump said that. He is one head.
It's the mascara.
It is. Somebody on the social media said that the two men are drawn to each other by their love of makeup.
I mean, Tom, I do think that people have some reason to be unhappy, right? They're dealing with it in the wrong way, right? But I think that the decline of manufacturing, of America's industrial sector, the insecurity, the inability to get a high school education, get a solid middle class job, et cetera, the sense of economic insecurity, the difficulty that people are finding, the shift. I mean, these are long-term complicated trends, but, the shift away from you can get a decent job with a high school education. If you're a man, you can support your family. You're going to have a pension. It's all going to be okay. I mean, that world is largely gone, right? And leaving aside the question of whether we are on our way to something ultimately healthier, maybe not. But I do think that what has happened, and I think this is particularly true for American men, white American men, right? Working class American white men, and I don't mean to say this is cool for them to do this, but that sense of security, that sense of this American dream, this American promise, the perception that is both gone and that is unfair. What that has now given us, and I do think there is a crisis, particularly for American men. We're seeing it across multiple domains, right? Fewer men going to college, more men on disability, fewer men with who are long-term employed, more men relying on women who are willing to work in the service sector, whereas it's just not manly enough for a lot of guys, right? We all know that, right, one of the biggest predictors of civil conflict, comparatively around the globe, is having lots of unemployed and unmarried younger males. And that's the direction that the U.S. has been moving in. And I think that it's all kinds of reasons. And I think the sense of grievance, while the sense of grievance may be totally inappropriate and misplaced, I think that emotion, that sense of where did it all go? That this fantasy, and maybe it was always nothing more than a fantasy, that there was going to be a place for this, that's fueling this. And that's part of
with fear for our democracy, I dissent.
Really?
Yes, they do, because I think it reverses cause and effect. The immigrants who come here don't seem to have this same problem. Amazingly enough,
I agree.
This is a white male. This is a working class white male issue, and a lot of it has to do with the breakdown of a particular kind of social structure and sense of virtue. Why do they admire this? I actually wrote about this. Why do working class white men admire Donald Trump, who forever would have been the enemy of men like that? A guy who doesn't pay his workers, skips everybody, whose word means nothing. This is a bunch of men who have refused to grow up. I don't think it's that. I mean, look, maybe I'm just affected by this because I grew up during the late 70s. I already saw deindustrialization happen. And I saw people not want to work those jobs even when they were there because they were awful. So we can talk about the civilizational decline another day, but I think that is too easy an answer that takes a lot of the arguments at their face value that I don't think we should take at face value.
Well, okay. This is, by the way, the point in the podcast where we say to everybody who's listening, thank you for listening. And to those of you who are not paid members, if you were a paid member, you'd get to listen to the rest of the podcast. But if you're not a paid member, we have to say goodbye to you now. Thanks for joining us. Join us again soon. And if you are a paid member, just stand by.